I'm grateful to each and every one of you for what you represent, for the fact that you are here. Of all the places you might have been, there are hundreds of you in this room. And I'm grateful to each and every one of you for having come here tonight, for celebrating the fact that we want the Commonwealth to truly thrive. I heard testimony from various people today talking about the fact that why should we change this, that, or the other law or the other rule or the other piece of legislation because we're doing well already. Somebody made a comment earlier about Clint Eastwood saying you're either on the right path or you're not. Will Rogers, the famous cowboy poet who some of you are perhaps familiar with, once famously said, even if you're on the right path, you'll get run over if you just sit there. And truth enough, we've done some of that in recent years to our own detriment. As other states around us moved forward, even if we were in fact arguably on the right path, we've allowed others to run right over the top of us. We're better than that. We deserve better than that. We now have a legislature that has stepped up in a way that is proving the fact that we are better than that. And I encourage each of you, please, in each of your respective spheres of influence, to make sure that you push the envelope, that you're bold, that you challenge yourself and your companies and those around you to make this state shine. We are passing legislation, has been noted by those that have preceded me, that is the likes of which we've not seen ever, some of which has been bottled up for many, many years. But it's our responsibility now to do something with that. We are empowering ourselves with an opportunity the likes of which no other state in America has. And I'll tell you this, if you were to listen to some of the testimony of those who were in opposition to the things that are being done right now, they want to slow down. They want to study things. I will tell you right now as the governor of this state, and I hope in fact some of you appreciate this as those who've been in the business community for some period of time. I don't care what the topic as it's related to pro-business legislation, tort reform, school choice, tax reform, pension reform, whatever the case might be. You're not going to see another blue ribbon panel while I'm governor. You're not going to see another 5-year study. And we're not going to sit here and talk about studying the situation. We're not going to sit around and talk about the fact that we need to monitor what's going on. Now is a time for action. This is what you elected us to do. I want to take a moment before I forget as well to thank two individuals who have each spoken to you tonight, but two people without whom I would not even begin to be able to do what it is that I have been asked to do by you, and that is the leader of both our Senate and our House. Robert Stivers is somebody who has been a real ally to me from the moment I showed up in Frankfort, and even before, frankly, before I was sworn in. He's somebody that I've turned to for an understanding of how the bells and whistles, operate and how to operate within the political ranks. He's a guy who's given me a tremendous amount of insight. And whether he's part of the old guard, new guard, or whatever guard he's a part of, I truly am grateful. Robert, I don't know where you went here, but thank you. For the guidance and the wisdom that you provided, the leadership that you have provided as well. I also want to call your attention to the truly masterful job that Jeff Hoover has been doing out of the gate. It is remarkable what he has done, and indeed, while I suppose it is their responsibility in some measure, the very same people who never gave the time of day to the minority in the House are now whining and complaining and calling for the opportunity to table things for discussion, to have more monitoring and more thoughtfulness and more time for everybody to give their 2 cents worth. And they have used every procedural trick in the book today, which is part of why Speaker Hoover was not able to be with us in person. And graciously and respectfully and brilliantly, he has handled himself and the affairs of the people in the people's house in a way that has been beautiful to watch, and I tip my hat to him, and please join me in thanking him for starting this session so incredibly well. The nature of these things is you're supposed to brag about what you've done and brag about what you're going to do and things of that sort, or inspire people and encourage them, and I've got a few minutes left. I don't have prepared remarks per se, and I thought about what it is that I should share with you. I found something last night that I thought I'm going to bring and show to you. We've done a lot of things, and you're familiar with them. If you're not, go to our Facebook page or look it up and call our office, and we'll give you a list of the things that we've done. You've seen what we've tried to do with workforce development, and you've seen what we've done, as it relates to the pension, and you've seen what we've done, as it relates to the expungement bill and things of this sort, some of which have been discussed from this stage. But I want to call out to those in this room, because this is a pretty impressive group of folks. And I may, in fact, go over my time, and if I get dinged, just understand right now I'm going to completely ignore it. And I'm going to just keep talking, and I hope it doesn't bother any of us. But I want to leave here by making a powerful point to you and a challenge to each and every one of you, because the Commonwealth of Kentucky needs you. Not just to show up at dinners and eat a nice meal and clap appropriately or hold your applause, depending on whatever it is that you're feeling, but to really step up in a big way. 2 years ago tonight, I was sitting at home. I was not anything to do with anything political at all. There were at that time 5 people who had filed to run for governor in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. There were 3 Republicans, there were 2 Democrats. I was not one of those 5. There was a couple of weeks left until the filing deadline. There was much discussion about all the people who had already cast their lot with one of the aforementioned people, and indeed they had. When I did decide, after conversation with my wife and our now Lieutenant Governor, about the fact that this was a time and a place for a true change agents to potentially step in and try to make a profound difference. There was no overwhelming welcome committee. There was not a single legislator in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, not one, who endorsed my candidacy, supported my candidacy, or frankly even encouraged my candidacy. Not one elected person in Frankfort. It's neither here nor there. Most of them had already engaged with some who'd been in the arena, fair enough. But it wasn't done because I had this bench strength and knew that I could ride that in. When in fact I did enter the fray, we swam uphill, never led in any polls, were told we had no shot. You remember the election in the primary, closest election ever in the history of the Commonwealth of Kentucky for a statewide election. And it turned out as it did. Again, neither here nor there, other than to say that as we then moved into the general election, everybody, every expert, every poll all said there's no chance, there's no opportunity, this is a wasted chance by the Republicans. And yet we plowed on. There was not a single newspaper in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, not one, not even a weekly, not even a freebie, not one that endorsed our candidacy. They all worked very hard in many respects in the opposite direction. Again, fair enough. Why do I tell you these things? Because when it's time to do the right thing, you just do it. You don't wait till you got all the ducks lined up. You don't wait until somebody tells you, I'm going to hand you this tied up in a neat little bow. The Commonwealth of Kentucky still needs each and every one of you. 2 years ago tonight, I was like one of you. I was a businessman. I was a CEO. I was a guy who employed people. I was somebody who made payroll, invested my own capital, and made cost-benefit analysis of how it was that I was going to employ the dollars that had been entrusted to me, some of my own and others that other people had invested. These were the things that I was doing, the things that you're doing. And now 2 years later, I find myself here 12 months and 28 days into being the governor of Kentucky. But I'll tell you what, and those of you who know me the best know this to be true, I'm hardly the sharpest tool in this shed. There are so many among you that are so much more qualified, so much more competent, so much more experienced, so much more able to articulate the values that you hold. Are you going to step up? I'm calling out to you. Kentucky needs you. America needs you. Your companies need you, true enough, and maybe that's the realm in which you're going to operate. But beyond just your companies, your communities, your school boards, your districts, your churches, your nonprofits, the ability for you to step up as a volunteer, but also I want in this room for some of you who have ever even remotely contemplated the idea of being among those who do go to Frankfort and make legislation that is good and is constructive and is not partisan, but is literally intended to be of self-service. I'm challenging you to really rekindle that thought process. Because I hope in this room tonight are the next governor and the next governor after that and the next one after that. And if it isn't one of you, that through the actions you take in the days, weeks, and months ahead by stepping up like you've never stepped up before, that you may in fact inspire the next governor, governors, and governors beyond that. This is our responsibility. We are blessed beyond measure, not only in Kentucky, but here in the United States of America. There is nowhere like this. We pledged our allegiance to this flag. You know this. 1.5 million Americans have died in uniform to give us the right to gather freely, to eat a meal, to do it safely in a climate-controlled element when it is, in fact, cold outside. So much sacrifice has been made. Who are we to think that we don't have to pay forward? Who are we to think that we get to ride? Every generation before us has literally paid something to give us the blessings that we have. And I'm challenging you, please, what can you do? More than you are doing, what can you do? Something small, something large. I employed many people. I had a lot of responsibility, people that were relying on me. I had a wife and 9 children at home. I had 1,000 good excuses. And truth be told, with all due respect to every one of you and to this office, my wife and family mattered a whole lot more to me than anything I've done in this job. This wasn't a decision I made lightly, and I understand you all have responsibilities, and I understand you have obligations. I'm asking you to step up anyway. When George Washington was asked if he would be the first president, years after, in fact, he had been the commanding general of the forces that led to the independence of this nation, after he had already said he did not want to be king, he was asked would he be president, and he said, "Have I not done enough for my country?" I hope somewhere in this room, some of you have some sense of that same type of calling, because we need you. We do have a House and a Senate and an executive branch that are aligned in ways that are going to be good for Kentucky. We are going to lead the nation in terms of job production and growth and business friendliness. Mark my words. We are going to lead the nation in terms of reduction of bureaucracy, reduction of red tape. We are going to lead the nation in terms of entitlement reform. When you see what we do with Medicaid reform in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, it will be like nothing that has been seen in America since we saw welfare reform in the mid-90s 20 years ago. This is what is coming. These things as surely as we stand here. We will see pension reform and tax reform that will be a model for the nation. I can tell you right now with great conviction that this will happen. We will see tort reform and school choice and these things coming. But these things are going to happen not just because the handful that are already here are working to make it happen, but because folks like you are going to be supportive and part of the solution yourselves. When I entered the fray less than 2 years ago, to be the governor of Kentucky, there were many who said, it's too late, it's too this, it's too that, you have no chance, what have you. They then said, well, you got to be careful about what you say. Not one person who was in the race at that time had been willing to put on paper and put forward a plan for what it is they would do if they were elected. That was one of the reasons I got into the race. I kept waiting for someone to say what they would do if, in fact, they were elected. Nobody in politics rarely wants to put something down on paper. The other day I found this. I put this out about 2 weeks after I filed to run. Had a little picture on the one side, and on the back side there were 7 things. It was the 7 bullet points that were the highlight of what I called a blueprint for a better Kentucky. The very first thing on that list was one that every single person that looked at it said, whoa, don't go there, don't say that. You have no chance of getting elected, certainly in a general election if you put that on there. The number one thing on there, enact pro-business right-to-work legislation. Well, how about them apples? How about them apples? Check. I didn't do this because it was the popular thing to do. I didn't do it because anybody in this body was supporting me to do it. I didn't do it because anyone was endorsing me. I did it because it was the right thing to do, and you all know that. This is what I'm asking of you, to do the right thing. The second thing on there is to modernize Kentucky's tax code. Stay tuned. It's coming. It's coming. The third thing on there is resolve our pension crisis. It's coming. We made the greatest contribution that has ever been made to our pension system in this past biennial budget, and it's a drop in the bucket. I have been working for hours and hours, and I've had teams of folks working for extended periods of time looking seriously at this pension crisis. Just today, I came out of a couple-hour meeting on this exact topic. One of the things that I asked folks to do, and I'm going to explain this in a way that I hope we all understand. You've heard talk about how we're $30, $35, $38 billion underfunded. This is assuming rates of return which we have not only not been getting, but have little chance of getting. That's what deludes us into thinking we're only that underfunded. But I will tell you this. I ask that we should peg it to 30-year treasuries, something that we could guarantee in some measure that we might get. And if, in fact, we assume that as our rate of return, which is the wise thing to do when you're as severely underfunded as we are, do you know what we are in terms of unfunded liability if we assume only that which we are pretty certain we could get? $82 billion. $82 billion. I want you to think about that in the days and weeks ahead and understand that that is 8 times what our annual gross intake is at this time. 8 times. If we spent every single cent this state takes in for the next 8 years, and assuming it doesn't grow in terms of obligation and interest, et cetera, we would only just begin to get back to the top of the hole that we have dug for ourselves because of irresponsibility on the part of those that have preceded me. This is a sobering statistic. We have got much work to do. That was the third point. The fourth point was reform Kentucky government. Indeed, we have the red tape reduction initiative, and you've seen these pins. I've pledged to cutting as much as 30% of all the regulation and red tape in the Commonwealth of Kentucky in the next 3 years, and we are well underway to making it happen. I would encourage you, if you're not familiar with it or have not helped yet, please go to redtapereduction.com because it's designed exactly for folks like you. You tell us how we can make it easier to do business in this state. It is estimated by the Mercator Institute that we have more than 30% more than the average amount of regulation for states in this country, and we are among the 5 most regulated, which equates to lack of business friendliness. We are addressing that. The fifth thing on here was modernizing Kentucky's education system. You watch this legislative session. We're one of 7 states that has 0 competition for public education dollars. Our state teachers union spent millions of our hardworking teachers' dues in this latest election, millions with an S, trying to keep in place the very same people that have held our state back for 95 straight years. Shame on the leadership of the Kentucky Education Association. I'm proud of our teachers, but it's a shame to see their dues have been getting wasted. That's going to come to an end. We will break that cabal. We will empower our teachers, and we will give our young people an opportunity to get the education that you all are paying for. That's coming. The last 2 points on here, numbers 6 and 7, improve Kentucky's health care. I talked about what's coming as it relates to Medicaid reform. You stay tuned with the types of things that are happening even right now as it relates to medical review panels. There are changes coming to Kentucky, and it comes because it's the right thing to do. The final thing is fight federal government overreach. And we've done exactly that as it relates to everything from fighting back on the federal government telling us who uses which bathrooms in our public schools and saying we can handle that here in Kentucky, to the overtime bill, which many of you are familiar with. We joined suit on both of those, and by we, I mean my office, because our Attorney General is too busy suing me to do his actual job and defend you all. And so my job is to do my job and his job, and this is what I will continue to do. I'm grateful to each and every one of you. I truly appreciate you, and I want you to think about the fact, where 2 years from now are you willing to go? What are you willing to put on paper? What are you willing to fight for even if nobody seems to have your back, and how badly do you want it? Thank you.